A few times on this channel, I've done episodes where I take characters from one thing and put them into a bunch of different genres, my genre swap episodes. But I don't think I've ever liked a prompt for one of those episodes better than what I'm doing today. Because today, I'm gonna specifically take famous, iconic horror movie characters and put them into genres other than horror.
Groovy.
I'm gonna rewrite their stories to fit those genres better and obviously redesign them. And funny enough, the reason I was prompted to make this episode was actually because, well, I mean, for one, because it's, October, Halloween month. I plan on doing a bunch of episodes around some spookier topics with some horror movie kinds of characters, but also because I had this idea for Jason Voorhees if he was in a high school coming of age drama, which was a weird premise, but I really liked the story for it. So that's in this episode, but I'll sandwich it between the other two stories because more often than not, people are coming to this channel for things more along the lines of, what if a Xenomorph was a fantasy dragon? So yeah, that's today's video. If you want to hit the like button before we get started, that's always helpful for algorithm stuff, but also you can wait and see if you actually like the video before you hit like. I mean, really, you can do whatever you want, but you already knew that. But anyway, we can start in with our first drawing, which is a Xenomorph if it was in a fantasy movie. Let's go. A band of warriors, often referred to as the Knights of Nostromo, were headed home after a brutal war with a clan of barbarian cyclopses that had left them all tired and eager to return to their loved ones. So in an attempt to get home faster, the band decided to try their might at the treacherous hike through the Acheron Mountains, a significant shortcut, but one that few attempted for the difficulty of the climb. It was windy and rainy and steep, but the group had seen worse. Elena Lou Ripos said little on the journey, but she was always listening. Listening for any approaching marauders or beasts or rock slides or anything else that could be hiding away in the largely unexplored mountains. And eventually, she would hear something that she didn't expect. At a moment when the wind had slowed, from the mouth of a nearby cave, Elena could hear what seemed like a quiet whimpering. Without a second thought, she marched into the cave, hand on the hilt of her blade. The whimpering grew louder and louder, and eventually she found, tucked away in a tiny crevice in the wall, a little girl. Elena tried to bring the girl out, but she wouldn't move. She asked where the girl's family was, but the girl didn't speak. She simply raised a hand and pointed past Elena. She followed the gesture to see the mangled bodies of two explorers next to what looked like the remains of large, shattered eggs. Then she noticed that there were far more eggs, but these ones all unhatched. Soon her band of knights trailed in to see the scene, and they started investigating the eggs, trying to decipher what kind of creatures lay inside that could have attacked these travelers. But soon, another started to crack open. The knights all drew their swords as out from the egg sprung a sleek, black dragon cub with no eyes. They were all unsure how to react. Nobody had seen a dragon around these parts for centuries. One overconfident knight began to lurch forward, but the instant he did, the beast reeled back and fired a stream of green fluid at him. He started to shriek as the liquid melted through his armor, then eventually through him. The dragon fled deeper into the cave as the knights all faced the horror of knowing they'd just found a nest of acid dragons. One of the most deadly and vile species of beasts imaginable. They bred quickly, with a single mother able to lay hundreds of eggs, and no less than a dozen fully grown of these beasts could unleash unspeakable chaos on the region. The knights began to slash through every egg they could find, and Elena managed to talk the little girl, who eventually revealed her name to be Newt, into coming out and staying close by. This was a mission they'd need far more knights to succeed at, so the band fled from the cave to go inform their queen of the trouble. But the heat from their torches and the presence of so many bodies in the caves had activated the hatching process for far more of these dragons. While still small, these beasts were incredible hunters and followed the knights down the already treacherous mountains. As they fought for their lives, the knights would only see more and more what a danger these dragons were. Along with their acid, the dragons also had sharp blades on the ends of their tails and wings. Their dark hides concealed them in the cloudy atmosphere until they were right on the knights, making it impossible to anticipate attacks. The group whittled down from 12 to 10 to 6 until finally Elena and Newt were the only two who remained and escaped. By the end of the trek, Elena was burned and scarred and exhausted, but she knew her journey was far from over. More and more of the acid dragons would continue to be born until the mother was slain and the nest burned. There was no time to rest. Elena informed her queen of the trouble and gathered a larger band of knights, but she still felt it wasn't enough. So then Elena went to the town artificer, the nearest thing her village had to a wizard, to see if he had anything to aid her. His work was largely made to improve agricultural tasks, but one piece of equipment he built would have to do. It was a large yellow suit of armor that enhanced the strength and durability of the wearer, intended for construction and quicker loading of carts and chariots. But it could be used as a perfect asset for battling the Mother Dragon. Elena donned the suit, sharpened her blade, and returned to the mountain with her new band, ready to put an end to the dragon menace or die trying. Jason had always been quiet and shy. He'd been born with a disorder that had altered the structure of his face, enlarging and lowering one of his eyes and giving him a drooping lip. This, paired with his stutter, had meant he'd been picked on through much of his early schooling and had always tried to hide his face away from his classmates. He kept to himself, always burying his head in hoodies, and made few friends even into high school. But it was hard to not stick out as a teen standing at 6'5" and being built like a fridge. This of course caught the attention of the hockey coach at school, who convinced the quiet lug to try out for the team, the Laketown Crystals. He was a bit lumbering, so skating wasn't his strong suit, but he thrived in net. He had surprisingly fast reflexes, and that, paired with his stature, made him a fantastic goalie. And to Jason's surprise, he actually enjoyed the game. He insisted on wearing an old-school hockey mask to cover up more of his face, which was unusual but didn't faze his coach because of how well he did in the position. 5 games into the season, he hadn't let a single goal into the net. He was thriving, and people cheered him on. After that 5th game, he was on his way back to the change room, still clad in his mask, and he was stopped by a girl from another school who'd been there for the game, named Alice. She congratulated him on the game, and almost wholly unrealized by Jason, she was flirting with him a little bit. But she'd also wanted him to take off his mask to see his face. He quickly made up a lie about it being stuck and rushed away from the conversation. But Alice kept coming back to his games, and kept coming to talk to him after the games. He'd always make excuses for why he couldn't take off his mask, because he was scared if she saw his face, she wouldn't want to see him again. Eventually, Jason told his mother about the girl, and his mom was thrilled. She told Jason that he had to try talking to the girl without his mask on, that if she didn't accept him for who he was, she wasn't worth his time. She even joked that if Alice rejected Jason, Mrs. Voorhees would kill her. Jason thought that was a little over the top, but she was at least right about one thing. He had to be brave and at least try. At the next game, Alice once more came to talk to Jason, and right as she came up to him, he removed his mask. She seemed slightly surprised at first, but was friendly enough. They chatted just as always, and Jason was thrilled. He even managed to stammer his way through asking for her number. She wrote one down, and soon after that, they parted ways. He was so excited that he didn't even think about putting his mask back on as he went about the rest of his day. And to his surprise, his teammates didn't treat him any differently. They were all friendly and cheered him on as always for his incredible goaltending that was actually leading them to the championships. With his new building confidence, he even went to school the next day without a hood on. Once again, nobody treated him any differently. A few people had given him second looks, but Jason had hardly noticed. For once, he felt like he could just be himself without hiding away. All this finally gave him the drive to actually call Alice and ask her out. He dialed the number she gave, got an answer. That wasn't Alice. He wasn't sure if she'd written it down wrong, but Jason would have to ask at the next game. Except she didn't show up. That night, Jason was devastated. His ultimate fear had come true. She'd seen his face and totally lost interest, and he cried himself to sleep. But yet, the next morning, when he woke up, he didn't feel as bad as he thought he would. Sure, at first it had really hurt, but Alice rejecting him didn't change the fact that everyone else had been treating Jason just like a normal person. Just because one person had been turned away by his appearance didn't mean he had to go back to hiding away in his hoods and masks. The next day, he returned to school still unhooded, and everyone was still nice. His hockey team ended up winning the whole season, and Jason received the MVP award, the first time a goalie had ever gotten the award at his school. Sure, there were times again in life when Jason would feel hurt by people's reactions to him, but seeing that there were plenty of people who would respect and accept him for who he was, allowed Jason to accept himself. One heartbreaking event had somehow led to him becoming the best version of himself and going on to lead a full and happy life. Just jumping in to say that hopefully by the time you're watching this, my Xenomorph dragon will be up on my Teespring store as a poster, along with most of the other dragons I've drawn on this channel. Sometimes Teespring will take stuff down, and sometimes won't give me much of an explanation, so a few of my posters have disappeared. But hopefully, this one will be up there, and it'll be all good to get if anybody wants it as a poster. Should be linked and easily accessible underneath this video and under pretty much all my videos. But anyway, back into the final story of the episode, also, subscribe if you like stuff like this, because I put out videos kind of like this twice a week or so. But yeah, anyway, now on to our final drawing and story, which is Ash from The Evil Dead, if he was in Steampunk. Ashwell Williams and his friends were escaping the bustle of New Yorkshire for the weekend to an old family cabin out in the woods. It had been owned by Ash's reclusive aunt, who nobody in the family had actually liked. She was a crotchety old inventor who cared more about machines than people. When she died, she left nothing to Ash's family, save for her old cabin. But that was enough for Ash to at least have a good time with his friends. They reached the cabin and all went in to find their rooms. The shack was an old bronze box of a place, shambled together with bizarre steam machines in every single corner. It was unsettling, but still an isolated place for some rowdy teens to have a fun weekend in peace. Or so they thought. While going through some of the dusty old books on the wall, Ash found one massive one that sat out farther from the wall than the others. As he tried to pull it out, there was a clicking sound that suddenly shot open a doorway in the floor that had been hidden under a carpet. Ash and his friends went down to look around. At first, all they saw were mechanical limbs, like pieces of destroyed mechs, unlike anything Ash had seen before. It was like a ruined old steam workshop. But soon they all realized that they weren't alone down there. Out from the shadows came a lumbering, decaying robot who looked at the lot and seemed to scan them. As it finished, in a clanking, unsettling voice, it said, "You are not Master?" A blade sprung from its arm as it charged at the group, flailing wildly. And that was only the first of the night's problems. The group escaped with one of the friends badly injured, and they all tried to seal the door. But the robot activated something in the basement that set the whole cabin reeling into lockdown. Steel and bronze doors came down from the walls, sealing every exit. They couldn't escape, and one by one, the various machines in the cabin began to come alive and attack the group. From below, they could hear the robot repeating, "Must not steal Master's creations." The group got picked off one by one as the cabin separated them and tormented them with machines previously unimaginable to Ash. Eventually, the one from the basement escaped and got to Ash, who tried to defend himself with a frying pan, but the duel ended in his arm being sliced clean off. But Ash wasn't a quitter. He got himself back into the basement and scrambled around for anything that could help. He managed to find an old blunderbuss along with an arm, on the end of which was a rotating blade. With his limited mechanical knowledge, he grafted the arm where his own had once been, and with his 2 weapons at hand, he reemerged from the basement. He fought like a man possessed, hacking and blasting through every machine that came his way. But every time Ash thought he was done, more and more mechs would crawl out from a corner of the cabin. He eventually realized he couldn't beat them all and focused on escaping. The combination of his 2 weapons slowly helped him hack through the doors to freedom. He got to his car and fled, but he knew that while he was safe now, this wasn't the end. As he drove off, he could see the bots also fleeing the scene, going off into the world. Once he recovered from that night, it would still be his duty to go off and find those bots before they could kill anyone else. Or he'd forget about it and just move on. He hadn't really decided yet.
Groovy.
Another successful episode of putting some things into some kind of other things. Admittedly, there was going to be 4 stories for this episode originally, but I kind of was having a hard time writing the last one, and then also Ash's stupid hand took a million years longer than I thought it would for some reason. But maybe I'll have to do another episode of this at some point. But also, that's a good thing to note for other aspiring artists out there. I've been a professional artist for 8 years now, and it still happens sometimes where I'll be drawing something and I just have to draw it a million times because it's not coming together properly. No matter what stage you're at in your art journey, getting frustrated and having a hard time drawing something is always going to be a thing that happens occasionally. But anyway, if you enjoyed this genre swap kind of episode, as I mentioned, I've got a few other ones. I did Spider-Man characters if they were in other genres. I did Avatar The Last Airbender characters if they were in other genres. I plan on doing a few more of these. I want to do a My Hero Academia one as well. But also give me more horror movie suggestions in the comments below. I've got a few ideas that I think I'm going to let people vote on, but I'd love to get other people's suggestions as well. Oh, finally for today, if anybody wants to participate in this, one of our awesome moderators of the PopCross community Discord, Kurt, created a Poptober drawing prompt list for this month, where each day you draw something that's a commonly drawn thing on the PopCross Studios channel. Looks like a lot of fun, and I'm gonna be following the hashtag Poptober on Instagram and going through the Discord Poptober channel to see what people are drawing and posting this month based on that prompt list. That was a fun idea, Kurt, thanks. But that's all for today. I'm Christian Pearson. This has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you all in the next episode on Friday. I ended that sentence as if there was more, but that was kind of the end, so yeah. Anyway, goodbye, everyone.